Alexander the Great conquered cities, crushed kings, and marched farther than any Macedonian had dreamed, yet his greatest vanishing happened after his last breath, when his own body slipped out of history. A corpse meant to anchor an empire became a prize, then a rumor, then a question no one can answer. He died in Babylon, young enough that people still expected more victories, and powerful enough that every man in the palace understood what his silence meant. The rooms filled with oil smoke, hushed footsteps, and guarded faces, because the throne was empty but the body was still there. In those first days, grief and strategy tangled together. Servants washed him carefully, wrapped him tightly, and sealed him behind guarded doors, while outside, generals who had once shared campfires now watched each other like strangers. Every glance held a calculation, every polite phrase hid a threat. The empire was too large to hold without him, and too rich to divide without blood. Men who had followed his banner to the edge of the world now argued about who should speak first, who should command first, who should stand closest to the bed where he lay. Even silence became a weapon. Rumors grew in the gaps where certainty should have been. Some swore he died from fever, sudden and merciless, a sickness that rose like heat from the city itself. Others whispered poison, slow and clever, poured into a cup with a smile. No one could prove anything, and no one dared demand proof. His body became the one solid thing in a collapsing world. The living could lie, change sides, and break oaths, but the dead king could not contradict anyone. Whoever controlled him could shape the story of his death, and stories decide who is rightful and who is merely ambitious with an army. They began to build a funeral worthy of an empire that still pretended to be whole. It would not be a simple bier, but a moving monument, a gilded carriage that would turn roads into temples. In its shadows, decisions would be made, and in its wake, loyalty would be measured. Artisans worked as if building a throne on wheels. Gold flashed under lamplight, carved beasts guarded corners, and a roof rose like a shrine above the platform. The design was not just beauty, it was intimidation, a declaration that even dead, Alexander could still dominate the horizon. Inside, they prepared him like something more than human. They sealed him away with oils, spices, and careful wrappings, as if trying to keep time itself from touching him. People claimed the body did not decay as it should, that death arrived late, or not at all, and that frightened everyone. A preserved corpse can become a miracle, and miracles are dangerous when men are hungry for legitimacy. If Alexander's body looked untouched, then any man who guarded it could hint that the gods still favored him. If the body decayed normally, then the empire would be forced to admit he was mortal after all. The plan, spoken aloud, was that he would return to Macedon, to the land of his fathers, to the royal tombs that waited in solemn stone. That plan sounded reasonable, almost comforting, yet it also sounded like a promise that could be broken the moment the wheels started turning. Because a funeral route is not just a road, it is a decision. Each mile fixes the future. Each city along the way becomes a witness. Each stop becomes a stage where power can be displayed. Any man who could redirect the procession could redirect the meaning of Alexander's life and death. When the day came, Babylon gathered to watch the departure. Soldiers formed lines, priests murmured rites, and the great carriage rolled forward with slow authority. It was not only a send-off, it was an unveiling of the new world, one where Alexander's companions would fight over his shadow. The procession moved like a slow army. The horses strained, the wheels creaked, banners lifted in the dry air, and the gilded shrine threw sunlight back into the faces of the crowd. Those watching did not know if they were seeing closure or the start of a longer disaster. Along the road, tension followed the carriage like dust. Officers checked guards, guards checked each other, and messages passed in low voices at night. No one trusted the next camp. No one trusted the next river crossing. The body at the center was too valuable to leave unprotected, and too powerful to leave unchallenged. One name haunted the route like a quiet decision waiting to happen: Ptolemy. He had been close to Alexander, close enough to understand how myth is made, close enough to know how quickly armies obey a symbol. He now held Egypt, a land rich beyond measure and hungry for divine kings. Egypt did not just bury rulers, it preserved them, displayed them, turned them into a lasting presence. A Macedonian king buried in Macedon would be honored, then replaced. A Macedonian king housed in Egypt could be transformed into something eternal, a living influence even while dead. Ptolemy understood that the dead conqueror could bless his rule without lifting a sword. If Alexander's body rested in Egypt, the land would become the empire's sacred center, and Ptolemy would become its guardian. It was not only theft that tempted him, it was the promise of unshakable authority. At some point, the procession was met, not by mourning crowds, but by armed men and smooth words. Accounts differ on how it happened, whether it was a respectful escort or a blunt seizure, but the result is the same in every telling. Alexander's body did not continue toward Macedon. It was diverted south, into Egypt, into a kingdom that knew how to keep secrets beneath stone. The funeral that was supposed to unite the empire became the proof that it was already breaking apart. Other generals raged, but rage could not rewrite the road that had already turned. To protest too loudly was to reveal the truth everyone feared, that the empire depended on a corpse. So the anger turned into plans, and plans turned into wars. While armies clashed over provinces and cities, the deeper struggle was quieter. Who had the right to speak in Alexander's name? In Egypt, the body was treated like a god returning. They brought him first to Memphis, ancient seat of kingship, where the air itself felt heavy with old rites. There, his presence could be woven into Egyptian tradition, his foreign conquests softened into sacred permanence. Later they moved him again, to Alexandria, the city he had founded by the sea. It was a city of straight streets and bright promise, and now it would hold his silent form. A conqueror who had built a new world would be enclosed in his own creation, guarded by men who feared each other. A tomb rose that was spoken of with awe. Some called it a shining house, others a shrine, others a prison made holy. The details blur, yet the idea remains vivid. Alexander lay within a place meant to dazzle visitors and silence doubters. A stone claimed that Egypt held the center of memory. Rulers came to stand near him, not merely to mourn, but to borrow his aura. They arrived with offerings, crowns, and careful expressions. Some touched the coffin, some stared too long, some prayed as if the dead could still grant victory. Every visit was a confession that power still belonged to him. Stories grew sharper with time, then stranger. One tale says the coffin was solid gold, so bright it made torchlight seem weak. Another claims the coffin was later replaced, melted down, or stolen, and that a new casing was made, less precious but still impressive, to keep the illusion alive. Even the body's condition became a battlefield of rumor. Some insisted the face remained recognizable, preserved beyond nature, as if the gods refused to let him fade. Others insisted that such talk was theater, a carefully maintained lie for pilgrims, because a decayed body would end the spell. Then Rome rose, and Roman eyes turned toward the tomb. Roman leaders came like conquerors in all but name, drawn by the feeling that legitimacy could be inherited through proximity. They offered wreaths, spoke reverently, and walked out carrying stories that made the tomb sound even more dangerous. One story claims a visitor leaned too close and damaged the face, snapping a piece away like a careless thief of holiness. Another story claims rulers stared at him as if measuring themselves against the dead, because no living man wanted to admit that a vanished Macedonian still defined greatness. Yet the strangest shift is how the descriptions begin to thin. At first, people speak of the tomb with clear details, a place that can be pointed to, approached, guarded, entered. Later, the descriptions become vague, like a memory that refuses to settle into one shape, like a landmark fading in fog. Alexandria changed hands, suffered fires, riots, tremors, rebuilding, and the slow pressure of time. Streets were altered, districts renamed, new rulers gave new orders, and each change laid another layer over the past. A tomb can survive stone by stone and still become unreachable by knowledge. Eventually, there comes a silence that feels deliberate. Mentions of the tomb become uncertain, then rare. People speak of it as something that exists, but do not name the door. They speak of reverence, but not the root. It is as if the city itself no longer agrees where its greatest treasure lies. This is what makes the mystery feel unnatural. Not that a body could be moved, but that it could be lost while so many needed it. Alexander was not a minor king forgotten in a border town. He was a world-shaking force, and his corpse was treated like a crown, yet the crown slipped away. Did the tomb collapse and get buried beneath later buildings, its entrance sealed by chance and neglect? Did sand and rubble swallow it in some disaster that no record preserved clearly? Or did officials choose to hide it, bricking up corridors, erasing signs, because too many eyes were gathering? A holy relic can become a riot spark. If crowds believed Alexander still rested there, they could gather in dangerous numbers. If rivals believed the tomb was accessible, they could use it to claim divine favor. In that sense, hiding the body could be an act of control, not devotion. But hiding can also be theft dressed as protection. A ruler could move the corpse to keep it safe, then keep it secret to keep it useful. A priesthood could relocate it to prevent desecration, then refuse to reveal the new place to anyone outside their circle. Silence can be an oath or a prison. There are darker possibilities that refuse to go away. Thieves might have opened the coffin for gold, scattering remains, leaving an empty shell behind. Enemies might have destroyed the body to break its power, because a dead king can still inspire rebellion. If that happened, the tomb might have stayed standing, hollow and guarded. And there is the possibility that the body kept moving. A corpse can be carried at night, through back streets, across water, from one secure place to another, whenever danger rises. If Alexander's remains were moved again and again, each move would erase certainty, until even the movers could no longer agree on the last hiding place. In that world, documents would be destroyed on purpose. Maps would be altered. Guards would be sworn to silence. The tomb in public view could become a decoy, a ceremonial room with a coffin that holds nothing, while the true remains sleep somewhere else, unseen, preserved by secrecy rather than stone. Even the coffin's story supports that fear. Gold becomes glass in some accounts, crystal in others, and each version sounds like a ruler's preference rather than a stable fact. When a story changes its material detail so wildly, it suggests hands were rearranging the stage, replacing props, keeping the performance alive. People still point to places in Alexandria and speak with confidence, then argue a street later. One corner is declared sacred, then dismissed. One buried chamber is celebrated, then proven too small. Excavations uncover walls and corridors, but never the unmistakable center, never a sign that says the search is over. The conqueror who had mapped rivers and deserts left no map to his own end. His cities were planned with straight lines, yet the line to his tomb twists into uncertainty. It is as if Alexander's final command was a silent one, forcing the world to chase him forever without catching him. If his body once drew kings like moths to flame, why did the flame go out so completely? Did fear snuff it? Did greed steal it? Did accident bury it? Or did careful men decide that the safest Alexander was the one no one could find, because an unseen king cannot be contested? Some nights, the story feels like a warning. If a figure as famous as Alexander can vanish beneath layers of rebuilding and silence, then fame is not a shield, it is a lure. It attracts those who would claim, move, hide, and rewrite, until the truth is not destroyed, only unreachable. So the question remains, hanging over the sea air of Alexandria like a held breath. Is Alexander still there, under stone and street, intact behind a sealed wall, waiting in darkness while the city lives above him? Or was he carried away long ago, leaving only a carefully tended emptiness? And if the world could lose the body that once held an empire together, who truly decided the moment it disappeared? And what promise was made in that decision? A promise that still demands silence whenever someone asks, in a city of shifting streets, where does Alexander the Great actually lie?